everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Zalora Talks, Asia's online fashion and lifestyle destination brought to life. This is your host, Yasmine, and I hope everyone's doing very, very well at home or wherever it is you're currently tuning in from. Just a quick trigger warning before we continue on. We'll be touching on rape culture just ever so slightly within this discussion. So if you do find it uncomfortable, please feel free to skip this episode. Now, I don't know about you guys, but these days, I find that there's so much happening around us, despite the fact we've been living most of our lives indoors. In a matter of few months, the Asian American community has been under attack. Meghan and Harry came out against the royal family. Prince Philip and DMX passed away. Kim Ye broke up. Myanmar facing a military coup. And we're not even halfway through the year yet. Closer to home, we've been going through our very own struggles too. From going into a state of emergency to electoral dramas, the first quarter of this year has been nothing short of eventful. But perhaps eventful isn't quite the right word for it. Just recently, two high-ranking politicians were being investigated for rape. One of them accused to have sexually assaulted his own daughter. As sickening as it is, this all comes in at a time where women are all becoming increasingly aware and forceful of the predicaments handed over to us just because of a mere biological circumstance. Especially now with the tragedy of Sarah Everard in the UK, we've all kind of come into a heightened #MeToo movement, yet for another round. But I think one of the biggest lessons here is that despite all the traumatic experiences we women have faced along the way, triumph prevails. Today, we have iconic trailblazers like Michelle Obama, Beyoncé, Angela Merkel, Christine Lagarde, which is a huge difference from what it was like several decades ago, when even after the suffragette movement, women like 50s Hollywood actress Hedy Lamarr was only known for her looks, but not for the fact that she was responsible for communication advancements that led to the creation of Bluetooth, GPS systems, and yep, you guessed it, Wi-Fi. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you some of our region's very own trailblazers. And I'm omitting the word female here because trailblazers are trailblazers regardless if you're a man or a woman. So now we've got founder of KL-based jewelry label, Wanderlust & Co. It's Jenn Laos in the house, everybody. Hey, Jenn, how's it going?
Hi, very excited to be here and to be chatting with all you amazing women. Can't wait to dig in today's topics.
Yay. And coming in hot from Singapore, we've also got former beauty queen and founder of loungewear brand Ever After, Karisa Sukamto. Hi, Karisa.
Hey, everyone. I'm also super excited to be here. This is one of my first podcasts, so look forward to the topics that we're going to be covering, Amy.
Yay. And last but not least, repping Indonesia on this episode is artist and co-founder of the Finery Report, Mandy CJ. Hello, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me here. Can't wait to dig in.
Great. Thank you, ladies, for coming on air with us today. Hope everyone's doing well.
Yes, we are.
Massive thumbs up. Coffee mug in my hand, so I'm very happy.
Massive thumbs up in the house. Now, first things first, each of you have pretty much made a name for yourselves, be it through business and or activism. Jenn, you started Wanderlust & Co., now an internationally recognized jewelry label worn by the likes of Gigi Hadid and even featured on Vogue. Karisa, you went from Miss Singapore World to a full-fledged entrepreneur, and Mandy being the brains behind social activist platform, The Finery Report. How did you all first start out? Let's start with you, Mandy.
All right. To be honest, I didn't plan on going into this world of media. It came unexpectedly, but I think I first started out being an influencer who likes to talk about sex education in Indonesia, which is still very, very taboo. I'm not sure if it's taboo in Singapore. Is it, guys? Like, do you have sex ed?
It's very taboo in Malaysia. I don't know how it is in Singapore.
It's still, I think it's in its very preliminary stages. There's definitely not enough out there yet.
Yeah. Same as Indonesia too. And, we built the Finery Report not only talking about sex education, but actually digging into the insights of the creative industry, because that's something that's really lacking in our climate here in Indo. So I've always felt like it was the right thing joining in, and there are many issues that I would like to amplify and deliver to the audience. So TFR for me is just the beginning.
Great. What about you, Jenn? How did you first start out?
When I first came up with the idea of Wanderlust & Co, I was actually in my 20s, and I guess you can say that I started the business out of my bedroom. And growing up, I actually had a very entrepreneurial dad. I had a bit of a tougher childhood, I guess, as most of our parents did during their time. So I think what sort of sparked entrepreneurism for me is the ability to actually create something out of nothing, or just, I guess you could say that, like, just the fact that an idea or the concept of people coming together to create, I think that excites me. And I actually started my career in Australia in fashion buying, majoring in accessories, so bags, watches, jewelry. And one thing about jewelry that really caught my attention at that time is how women have quite a positive relationship with jewelry. There's no size hang-ups. When it came to everything else, whether it's shoes or like clothing, there's a lot of size hang-ups. So I just found that it's a very positive experience with jewelry. No one gets a piece of jewelry and sort of goes, this isn't fair, it's not right color for me. Like, you go, it sparkles. So I think it all kind of started from that desire to want to create joy. And I realized there was a gap in the market digitally to create a brand that wasn't just about selling stuff, but was about conveying, I guess, a positive messaging. And that's, I guess, where my story began.
Great. I think, Karisa, you can also relate to that.
No, definitely. I think what Jenn mentioned about having this entrepreneurial spirit, and as well as Mandy about sometimes things evolving in a somewhat accidental way, definitely resonates. I think this sense of like entrepreneurial spirit, its core comes from being somewhat in touch with a passion or conviction within us. And I can recognize that each of us have kind of done our best to pursue that in the way that we know or can connect the dots with. So personally for me, yes, you mentioned earlier, I did join the Miss World pageant, which was, not something that was ever planned, not something that I ever thought that I could even, participate in, because I'm not the stereotypical beauty queen. For anyone that knows me, I'm actually very petite. So standing on a stage amongst everyone that's probably a head taller than me was definitely character building. But I think from that experience, what I learned about women is that confidence, I think, is where true beauty is. And I think building the confidence to, pursue what we want to do. So for me, I had always wanted to start, a small brand and see whether I could. And it wasn't immediate. Earlier, before we started recording, it was mentioned how I was working actually with Zalora, and I'm so grateful for that time, because I think they gave me a lot of autonomy. I learned so much from the people that worked there, and that's definitely been a part of how I was able to kind of gain the confidence to pursue starting a small brand.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of began.
Yeah. I mean, coming up to from where we all started, did you guys ever had to deal with personal challenges from the very beginning? Let's start with you, Karisa.
Definitely. I think I would sit on ideas and just ruminate. And I finally realized, unless I just begin, I'm never going to really know. And so I think it was not perfect, and it's still not perfect, but just going for it and learning along the way and hoping that, fellow women, because I think if anything, I would have just been embarrassed or ashamed that something is not at the standard or expectation of, the fellow community, fellow ladies that I want to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think nowadays we're a lot more gentle with each other and patient. So that's a personal challenge that I'm trudging forward with anyway.
Yeah. How about you guys?
I think one of the things I've really been personally challenged with, and I'm sure like for Mandy and Chris and even you, Amy, you can relate, is oftentimes as women, we tend to be very hard on ourselves. I think we're our own toughest critic. And especially when our name's on the door and you're out there repping yourself, whether it's a news platform or I guess as a host or a writer or as a founder, you do feel very accountable in that sense, and especially to ourselves and to our work and our audience. And I think one of the things that I had to really tone down or tame down is definitely to be able to let the right things go. Because I think there's a level of perfectionism and I think ambition that is required in being a founder or in doing anything well, to be honest. Because I do feel sometimes the word founder is a bit thrown around a lot, because you can be working for someone and be wanting to put your best foot forward. You don't necessarily need to run a company to be wanting to do that, to be good at what you do. And I think being able to, I guess, turn down the perfectionism, turn down the inner critic, and realize that if something doesn't matter in 6 months, if it doesn't matter in 3 months, if it doesn't matter in 3 days, being able to be more gracious to yourself in this situation is in large part a huge, huge thing. And I think we can be happier, we can be more efficient, we can be more effective, we can be more amazing leaders, we can be a better team player. And so I think that's been one of my personal challenges that I hope is relatable to most.
Yeah, definitely. Mandy?
Definitely. Yes. Mine's a little bit different because I'm 19 now. I'm only 19. And I started out when I was 17, 18 years old. So the word teen at the end, the word being a founder teen, already gives people a pass to criticize me. And sometimes I have to lead people who are 10 years above my age. And I feel sort of intimidated sometimes because I'm always confused, like, did I do the right thing? Because my experience is lacking from the people who is in my team.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a personal struggle for me to have that self-confidence and being assured that even though I'm a young woman at a young age, I can, go through that, trailblaze through that industry, which is male dominated.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? I'm actually reminded by this one quote by Chris Carr. It's not about finding your voice. It's about giving yourself permission to use them. And Mandy, I think you really hit the note on this, but how do you even start to give yourself permission to use them? Where do you even begin? Like for you, if you're to, speak up and rise up against all these people who are about, decades older than you were, where do you even start?
Yes. And I want to jump in
on
this. And I think what's interesting is there's such a fine line between modesty, humility, and shame. I think as women, we're so used to not necessarily using our voice all the time because we're told, not to be too loud or not to have too strong of an opinion, not to care too much. And in subtle ways, I think, especially in our Asian culture, that is what is somewhat reinforced. So I think it's incredible that, as a teen founder, age aside and everything, I think it's so commendable and impressive that you are still kind of doing your best to create that platform for fellow women.
Yeah, definitely. It's super commendable.
Yeah, I totally
Thank
agree.
you so much.
Yeah. And I guess like when I first started my business, I was like 25. And I started thinking about it much earlier in my early 20s. And so this year, my brand is 11 years old. And looking back, I think one of the things I really wished I would have done for myself is to actually just be a bit more confident and to really trust your gut, because ultimately no one gets it right all the time. And it's like, and it's okay to make mistakes. I think we're building up a generation. I noticed this in my team as well, because I have a team of nearly 30 at HQ. And for the most part, a lot of them are incredibly talented women and young. And I love that youthful energy, but I see so much fear of failure in the millennials. And there's a huge like, oh, what if it goes wrong? But like, it's okay if it goes wrong. You just learn and you get so much better. So it's okay to get it wrong.
Yeah, definitely. I guess in a women's like a management role, what do you think can be done more in the workplace to further empower women?
For me, I feel like being honest is very important. I think communication is super important. Being honest is important. I think if more women can speak up about their needs, be it like to balance out, like I have 2 little ones. My daughter Olivia is 4. My son Oscar is 2, turning 2 next week. I used to feel like as a leader, I needed to have all the answers. I couldn't show any weakness. But like my son had an MRI 3 days ago and I took a whole day off to go and, go to the hospital and accompany him. And I let my team know. I think being open and being honest, because if more women spoke their truth, whether you're working in an SME or you're a founder or you're in corporate, the more women tell their stories and speak their truth, the more society, organizations, systems, and structures can bend to accommodate this new silhouette of what this new workforce looks like. And the more women stand up and say, no, I can't do it this way, but I can do it this way instead. So I think it begins first with conversation and speaking your truth, and then followed by action. People in positions of power who are able to make policy changes, who are able to make, new quota systems, like to make more flexibility. I think that's important. I had a resignation from someone in my team a year ago, and she's a mom of two. And of course, I can relate to her. And so I sat her down and said, you've been here for a year. And interestingly, just to go on a bit of a story. So I interviewed her 4 years ago and I didn't remember, but she remembered. And she said, Jen, do you remember you interviewed me 4 years ago? I was like, oh my gosh. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, I interviewed so many people. And she said, I was pregnant. She said, I was 6 months pregnant and I was let go from my job because I was pregnant. And I came to interview with you and we had such a nice chat. And I actually said to you that I think I'm going to go along and look after my firstborn, and then for you to keep my CV on file. And she said, so I gave birth to my first kid, and then 8 months later fell pregnant again. And then she said, now my two kids are 5 and 3 and I'm ready to come back to work. So when your HR contacted me to say I had an opportunity for an interview with you, I was so excited. So then I looked at her CV, and this woman hasn't worked for 4 years, right? She has not worked for 4 years. And I took a chance on her. And she did. And she grew so much. And I think she was obviously a little bit clunky at the start, but then she got really good. And then she gave me the resignation and I asked why. And she said her father-in-law is asking her to stay home. Women should stay home, she said. And so we had the longest chat. And the sum of the story is she now comes into work at 8:30. She leaves at 4:30 to pick her kids up from school. And I bumped her salary a little bit to accommodate for her travel time and whatnot. And she's now still with me. And so I think, I'm just one person. My business is not so huge and I have only 30 people. But if every person who is in a position of power is able to apply compassion, understanding, and is able to just make micro changes, then the world will be different for women in the workforce.
Yeah, definitely. I think compassion is a very important thing, but also on the flip side of that, you have women who are still struggling to find the confidence, I guess, I remember my mom, when I was trying to raise an issue or have a debatable conversation with her, I wanted to do this, I want to do that, or just really just have an ambition. My mom would be like, oh, why don't you just work with a company, 9 to 5, kind of 9 to 6 kind of job, and just kind of put me in my place, no, and then I went against her and no, listen, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to have all these different, I listed out all the different ambitions that I wanted. And she looked at me as if I was crazy. This is ridiculous. Why can't you just be a good little girl at home, or just do things what you're supposed to be doing, or the things that society has kind of expected you to do. And I'm not that kind of person, but I guess it comes with a generational kind of thing, when we grow up, their generation is very different from our generation and so on and so forth. And, Mandy, here you are, with your own platform and you're speaking out, about all these things. And that actually says something about our current community, our current generation, going ahead. Now, going into that, what do you think, especially in Southeast Asia, where we are today in terms of female empowerment in the workforce and outside of the workforce?
I think, this term, new normals, has become apparent during this pandemic time. But I think also in terms of just how, in terms of female empowerment, we are shifting away from what we know as the status quo in Southeast Asia. So as you mentioned, certain generations do strictly believe what a woman's role is. Yet I think this is the time of niche, in which case, as women, we are almost kind of shaping what it means to be a woman for us. And I think that's very important outside of the office, within the office. Nothing is as singular anymore. So I don't necessarily feel we need to necessarily subscribe to certain roles, right? Yeah. Because in order to really thrive, it's being aware of our potential and our skill set, having a system or space to cultivate it, which I think hearing about Jenn and your company, I mean, it sounds incredible in doing that.
Jenn, any thoughts?
I feel like social media has given us a very curated view of the world, and I think more than ever, I find it very refreshing when people call out certain things or share certain things very transparently. I think that, for the longest time, we were constantly comparing someone else's highlight reel with our real life. And then I guess the real numbers do show last year, mental health has really, really depleted globally. I mean, of course, large part to the pandemic, but I think the pandemic has forced a lot of people to internalize or spend time with their thoughts. And I think a lot of that unpacking emotionally when we're in a haste and we're so distracted, didn't really take place. And it obviously took place for a lot of people last year. I think for me, feminism is also about, I guess, I go back to saying speaking your truth, and about sharing, the reality of things. Yes, I know a lot of people would say, oh, Jenn, this is so awesome. This is so great what you do. But quite often on my social media, I would share, my nanny's been with me for 8 years. My husband is super supportive, my team, and I've shared also very truthfully, post my second child, having my second child, Oscar actually went through postnatal depression for a period. And most people who know me will know that I'm very happy, very bubbly, very, everyone calls me their positive pill, but I'm a real person. And I think being real with yourself and being vulnerable, I love Brene Brown and her work on being vulnerable, and being open, and being clear. I love her book, Clear is Kind. And I think destigmatizing the untruths and being more honest with the truths, it's, for me, part of what feminism should look like this year. Being open, being honest, and speaking your truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I guess I'll chime in a bit about the feminism in Indonesia.
Yeah.
I think it has been discussed a lot, but a lot of the time when I speak about being a feminist, a lot of people would say oh my God, you're an SJW. Do you guys know what SJW is? It's basically social justice warrior. You're that annoying girl who speaks about climate change and all these important issues. I think feminism is about gender equality. It is actually an essential, basic human right, because whether we realize it or not, men indirectly become victim of the patriarchal society as well. Men should not cry, don't be less of a man, men cannot earn less than a woman, and stuff like that. But in Indonesia, in the developing world, because boys are seen worthier than women, they have the access to education, access to a lot of other privileges that we do not receive. And thus it creates not much of a choice of improving standard of living. So for me in Indonesia, basically I sort of focus more about trying to change the structural systematic issues, especially in poverty, because I think empowered girls, if we go back to the main essential of feminism, is creating a space where women can sort of have equal opportunities. And I think what can be started in Indonesia is giving them enough education so they can have the fuel to change their lives, to break that cycle of poverty.
I read an op-ed by this digital consultant who majored in gender studies. Her name is Z Praise. And she mentioned that, feminism doesn't work in Southeast Asia yet. I find that a bit of a controversial statement, but what she's basically saying is that, people don't want to see feminism because it's considered an invasion of culture. Systemic barriers that stemmed from years of colonization that prevented the dissemination of information. Mandy, I think you're quite a pro at this. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, if we sort of compare the feminism that we're striving for in the United States or in other developed countries and the ones here, I think in Indonesia or in Southeast Asia, we still need to introduce better the concept so that people who do not understand or do not have the privileges that we have in speaking very fluent English and understanding the Western version of feminism can understand and accept it much better. You know, I guess we are all here educated women and guys. Hello. We have access to this podcast, to Instagram and everything, but we sort of deny the fact that a lot of other people who do not have the financial means as us won't understand the level that we are sort of having this conversation right now. So I think in Southeast Asia, that's the stage that we're going for, to introduce it in a much better way for them to understand.
It kind of seems like as if, gender equality is also a poverty issue in a sense, or tech poverty issue in a sense that I guess those who are able to get access to the internet, to social media, even as Jenn was saying just now, like it's really been thanks to social media that everyone is getting a little bit more aware. Those who are living in rural areas or even remote areas, this sort of things are just kind of foreign to them. I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, right. I definitely think the echoes of patriarchy, of course, still exist and will exist for a long time. And what you've both touched on is the fact that we're not negating away from traditional roles that have exist and do exist. I think it's more exactly creating that awareness and hopefully the opportunity that allows women to choose.
Yeah.
Simple as that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, girl.
Going back to that as well, I have to ask this to Jenn. Can a woman really have it all? Being a mother, I think that goes back to it as well. Like everyone's kind of had this misconception that we can't, but, can we have it all? Being a mother, being an entrepreneur, being this, being that, everything else under the roof.
I mean, have it all is sort of like a very loose definition because all is like different to different people too. But I think we can, but something has got to give. So it's almost like you can't at the same time. So you can, but there will be a form of sacrifice. Mm-hmm. I guess what I mean is like, I think the word balance needs to be redefined for working moms, just because you touched on like being a mom, being an entrepreneur and all that. For me, balance isn't necessarily, okay, every single day I can work 6 hours and spend 2 hours with my kids and yoga for this much time and meditate X amount of time, make a home cooked dinner, have a glass of wine, stretch out, have a hot bath, bubble bath. So for me, that isn't necessarily balance. It's what perfect Instagram grids and Pinterest boards have over popularized. But for me, balance is today I'm at the office. My day started at 7:00. I actually only went to bed at 1:30 because my son was up crying. And I'll be at work till at least, 7:00 today. It's a long day. But then yesterday I could take time off and take him to the doctors and then play with him after. So I think we need to redefine what balance means. And so if we can redefine what balance means, then we can have it all. But sometimes we can have it all in front of our faces, but because we're unable to flow, to trust the flow, we only see balance in a specific form, and we might constantly still have so much and feel like we have nothing at all.
Yeah.
So for me, I think a big key to feeling like you have it all is being flexible in your acceptance of what all looks like and when and what shape or form or time frame it takes place, if that makes any sense. Like I'm happy on a Saturday to not have my phone on me for 3 hours and not go on Instagram and mindlessly scroll for 3 hours. Like I instilled this habit when Olivia was born 4 years ago. And I like that. And I'm thankful that because I have a team and they come up with a social media grid and everything is pre-planned, like I am able to not be on my phone for 4 hours on a Saturday and just spend, unlimited time. But then like today, I haven't looked at my home CCTV for 3 hours. I dropped my daughter off and I haven't checked in on her. Like I'm here fully at work. So I think that to me is having it all, being able to be present, being able to be grateful for what all looks like. That's having it all.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. That sounds like a crazy day for you. Great.
That's pretty much every day for any mom. Like, I think the women that I most admire and most love, like they are messy and they are real and they say things as they are. They're not perfect. And I think they're amazing because they're not perfect.
Yeah. And I think it also stems from like having that confidence to just be yourself. But more often than not, a lot of people, I guess this is also down to, having Instagram and being on social media platforms that, you're always constantly trying to strive to be someone else. And society somehow kind of says that, no, you have to be a specific way. You have to fit in a specific category, or you need to be like a specific person. Like you get the likes of Kim Kardashian and all that. And women are all just trying to strive to look like have a specific body type. And I find that quite toxic as well, because I don't have the most perfect body. I don't think what is even a perfect body. Curves can be in trend now, but they may not be in the next like 10 years. And then you're constantly chasing after something that's completely unattainable. But, going back to confidence is a sense of whether or not you're confident in your own skin and being able to show that imperfection. How do you guys feel about that? Karisa, do you want to chime in?
No, definitely. I think this phrase or this word beautiful and how we resonate with that, I think it's so interesting because I've always kind of thought about if we were to go into a room full of women and you ask, the audience, how many of you feel beautiful today or think you're beautiful? I think the majority will probably not raise their hands, right? I feel like for some reason we're so conditioned to question our worth, our value. And as you mentioned, what we see plastered all over social media is this filter of perfection.
Yeah.
And as humans, we thrive towards that because, yes, once we're content and happy, then what? Perhaps. So I do think it's about learning how to feel beautiful and have the courage. I don't want to be a hypocrite here because, there are times when I'll admit, I'll look at a photo and be like, ooh, let me edit out my dark circles and let me make this smaller or this bigger or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm still as a woman that sees the beauty in women of all shapes and sizes, still does that. And I actually think about this because there are women out there now on social media that are very real about who they are. And I admire and commend it. And I hope to be able to build the courage to be able to do that too. But confession, I'm not there yet.
How do you promote gender equality both inside and outside of the workplace? Especially in Malaysia, where female leadership is well below the gender gap, according to the World Economic Forum.
All right. I think I'm really thankful for leaders like Jenn who gives opportunities for mothers and for pregnant women. Like, I am so touched hearing that because my media just had a survey of why the industry, like all industries, are also male dominated because they don't really select female leaders thinking that they would become mothers. And being a mother means that you're going to have less passion for your work, your career. I mean, how is that to you, Jenn? Like, you are a mother and a career woman at the same time.
I think I'm a better leader. And if I can be so open to tell you that I shied away from the term leader like 5 years ago. So I'm 30, I'm giving away my age. I'm 37 this year. And even in my very early 30, 31, 32, when some people said leader or like at the forefront of the industry, because we're taught, especially as Asian women, to be humble, to deny compliments, to say, no, that's not me. But that is you. You're brave and you're bold, right? Mandy and Karisa, you're stepping up to, you're wanting to redefine what beauty is and what you do and what you stand for. And Amy, just the fact that you stood up to your mom to just say, no, but this is me. And I'm not going to apologize about being me. I'm okay with it. Are you okay with it? Right. And I think at the very core, I realized that from the moment I became a mother, my body changed. I have some stretch marks. My tummy isn't tight, but I think I never appreciated my body and my mind and myself as much as I did after having kids. And having said that, I know everyone's journey is different. You don't necessarily have to get married and have children, and that's okay. But I think the point is, for me, being a mom has not held me back from my work. Being a mom has made me so much better at my work. I'm more compassionate. I am more effective because I'm more time poor, and I have a real reason. My little girl, she looks at me like I'm her whole world. And I believe in karma and I believe in energy. And I feel like, you know, in whatever small way in my SME that I can touch the life of someone else positively, however big or small, I'm paying it forward into the universe. And when I drop her off at school, she looks at me with her big eyes, you know, like I go to work because I want to show her that you can have a child, you can go to work, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, and we practice what we see. We don't practice what we're told. And so the other day we were in a toy store. She was like, Mommy, I want this, I want this, I want this. And I said, well, darling, you know, you just got this new toy and Mommy has to work to get you this new toy. I can't afford it. Like I could, it was 50 ringgit. But I was like, I can't afford it. She's like, Mommy, is this why you go to work? I was like, yes, because if we want something, we work hard for it. So, and she was like, oh, so that's why you go to work every day and you're on this. And then so she has a toy laptop. She opened it and I was like, what are you doing? I'm writing emails. I'm working, Mommy. And
baby boss in progress.
She's funny, yeah. And I teach her a lot of manners. I say things like, so she'll go, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. And I'll be talking to my husband and I'll be like, darling, you have to wait till I finish. You don't interrupt. But I said, excuse me. I was like, no interrupting. So the other day she was talking to her nanny. I said, Olivia, she was like, Mom, you have to wait for me to finish. No interrupting. And then she finished the conversation. And then she looked over at me and she said, what were you saying, Mommy? I'm ready for our conversation now.
Oh my God. I love her attitude. I love it.
But it's just little things like that shows me this cause and action, you know, like just the butterfly effect and this pay it forward energy thing and just practice what you preach thing. Like my children are a real life example of things like that being so real and so, you know, it's true and tried and tested every day in my micro tests with them. And that, you know, powers me more than anything. Is it hard? Yes. Am I exhausted sometimes? Yes. Do I have more lines and dark circles? Yes. But do I feel happier in my head and more comfortable in my own skin than I ever have been ever in my whole life? Also, yes. So I guess that's my point about having it all. It's about balance, trade-offs and opportunity costs and making peace with it and being whole in your heart, not just on the outside on your face. And, yeah.
You know, I like to add because you know, every time in Chinese New Year, there comes an age in Chinese New Year where the daughters have to help out in the kitchen and the boys can still play games. And I always felt like that was the moment where I clicked like, my God, this is so unfair. Like, why do I have to help out in the kitchen, setting up the tables and washing the dishes when my brother can just leisurely like chill around, you know, watch TV.
Netflix.
Then I'm like, Netflix. And then, so I think going back to Amy's question is that treating daughters and sons the same way, like both of them need to have equal chores, equal, you know, and talking to daughters, like, you know, my dad used to say to me, you know what, just find a rich guy and you're fine, you know?
Yeah, but that's always a thing though. There's always that line.
Last week, my dad said to me, why are you still working?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So like the whole time, like still, and sometimes I think I've come a long way to also not hate the process because I think it's part of the history of things evolving. Nothing ever, if you look back in ancient history from the Industrial Revolution, at any point in time, change takes time. Good things take time. So I think when something like this happens, one of the things that I'm most proud of myself now is I'm no longer angry. I just go, well, that just shows me how I can be different. So I am consciously parenting. I have to stop myself from my learned behavior as a child, Mandy, because like I was parented exactly the same. It was like, you know, this and that and all this kind of stuff, like, oh, you don't have to work. And I was like, but I want to work. Shouldn't that be even better than
applauded
needing to work?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, so if I didn't need to work and I worked, isn't that better? Because like what you said at the start, Mandy, really touched me when you said, I love how even, I guess, like obviously you're very mature because you said like, well, we speak really good English. We have access to this information. We know what HBR is. We read Bloomberg and like Amy's dropped about 25 new facts I never knew just in a short span of half an hour on this podcast. And you know these things because you read and you're passionate and you have access and not everyone does. So does that not mean that those in access should constantly be creating more equal opportunity? Isn't that what inclusivity is about? So if everyone who has access sits on their fingers, has 6 helpers, 25 drivers, 35, you know, cleaners, and then just is a mom. And I hate saying that like being a mom isn't important because I'm a mom and I love it. But but I also feel like the workforce needs to open up for more women, so women are able to come in and contribute. And so people who are fortunate and have access and can make a difference want to, because the system enables them.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Preach it.
Agree. And at the same time, I feel it's what you both spoke about and what has been a theme. It's, I think, really about instilling these values, characteristics, and behaviors from when we're young. Because, I think past generations or parents' generations, everything was very driven by externalities. This is how it should appear. This is what you should look like. It's what looks good or what is presentable. But if we can start being motivated by truly what drives us, I think, the world will be a little kinder, a little more compassionate, and able to encourage each other. And I don't necessarily feel that things have to be mutually exclusive. I feel it's always very singular, like, oh, okay, you are an entrepreneur, so you're only that. You are a mother, so you're only that. And the list goes on. I think this is a time where there are multi-hyphenates. I mean, Jen, all of you. And I think it's okay to own that. And I think it is also okay if there are women who want to be, not just want to be mother. That's a full-time role in itself. I feel like I'm blanking now.
That's all good. No worries.
What was I going to say? Sorry, no, I had a point. I don't even have pregnant brain. Anyways, that was my point.
But we understand what you're saying. And I think, just to add on, Karisa, to your point, I think being self-aware is one thing that I hope the education system can instill in our children. Because you said think, Karisa, right? Like, I dress my daughter and I put her in a pink dress. I also put her in tracksuit pants. I put her in a blue top. Like sometimes I buy her pajamas that are blue so I can pass it on to Oscar. Because I'm like, well, you can wear blue and your dad doesn't want him to wear pink. And I have arguments with my husband. I'm like, why can't Oscar wear pink? Then I'll sneak in a pink top. But I think, jokes aside, I think being self-aware is important. So look, if you want to put on cute jeans that, hug your bum the right way because you want to feel good and that makes you feel good, that's fine. But being self-aware about why you're doing something, like, hey, I saw it on this girl and it looks good. Like being honest with yourself, like just being self-aware, I think is important. So I think it's not about, hey, don't brush your hair when you go out, or but just being aware as to why you're doing it. So if you hit the gym and you want to feel better or look better, like when I had to get rid of my baby weight, right? Like I wasn't confident. I wasn't happy with how things fit. And I knew I wanted to go back to the gym, and I knew, but feminism to me isn't like, well, now I'm going to just be huge and like not care. And so I think everyone's different. What's a good size for you and what's a good look for you and what's your litmus is different. And I think making it okay for everyone to be themselves, and then being sure that we're kind of educating children on growing awareness as to what is prompting them to behave a certain way or what is prompting them to want or not want certain things is probably more important. Because I think the most dangerous person is one who's unclear as to like someone who's erratic, like they're not even quite sure why or who or what's motivating them. So I think understanding your motivations and being self-aware is important. And then just doing all these different things, whether it's losing weight or looking good or putting on makeup differently or like wearing different clothes or being a different size. I think all that doesn't matter. All that's beautiful.
Thank you. Now I'm reminded what I was going to say. I think in terms of feminism, I think what Mandy was saying earlier, when she says this word, people are like, oh my gosh, you're this kind of extremist or whatnot. But I think what's interesting, and I think I heard it somewhere, is that, feminism doesn't not mean that you have to not like the opposite sex or not, like men or want to be a wife or want to have a husband or these kinds of things. It's okay to be a feminist and like to wear sexy things, and then I think it's this idea of, okay, feminism is really, I think, how we are motivated. And I guess it's the potential of each woman as individuals in all its idiosyncrasies and uniqueness.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to what Jen was saying just now, especially when we're talking about educating our children and even protecting our children, there's a lot of this. This is one quote that's been going around quite a lot. I think maybe in the past few months is that, it's not just about protecting our daughters, but to educate your son too. And I actually almost went into an argument with someone who kind of like slid into my DMs and started to like, yeah, but it's not just about, educating. Why does it have to be one or the other? And I'm like, oh my God, seriously, we're going to have this conversation. But what do you guys think about this line, protecting our daughters, but to educate your son? I mean, this comes in at a time where, the case in the UK with Sarah Averill was just like at its height at that point, but it's happening here as well. People are probably talking about it because, it's in the UK and it's a huge, media and everything. But even in within our own region, in our own backyards, cases like this is happening every single day, every hour of the day, if anything.
I hate it when, especially in the dark depths of comments in social media, where it's like, well, she shouldn't have worn that, or she asked for it. I think it's 2021. You're still using that line? Is it the second century? Like what is this? The 21st BC or something? Like,
yeah,
and I have a daughter and a son, and respect, regardless of gender, is important. And it shouldn't be just a girl's job to protect herself. Like, it should be everyone's job. It's just like, it's not just, up to women to create more opportunity for women. It's everyone's job, right? For the longest time, women have enabled men. How many women have stayed home to care for someone sick? How many women have taken a career break? How many women have taken, it upon themselves to like cook, clean, do this, do that, run errands, like run 100 times to the grocery store to get milk and eggs and bread. And before we had Deliveroo.
Yeah, definitely.
And how many, like, the number of women who have stood behind successful men and strong men and enabled them. And then in turn, I think women today then get this whole thing of like, well, she shouldn't have worn this. And I think it's so broken. The system is so broken. Like, if you're a good mom, you would teach your son to respect himself and others just as much as you would teach your daughter. And you shouldn't instill fear in your daughter. How many times have we been told like, oh, you'll be kidnapped, you shouldn't do this, look over your shoulder. Like, even me as a grown woman, like when I was in Europe and I was in a dark alley, like I would grip my husband's hand a bit tighter and be like, let's go quicker. Like, I would hold on to my handbag. Like, what is this world we are creating so women can live in fear? And then we perpetuate that and then expect everyone to okay this. It's not okay.
Yeah.
It was never okay, and it shouldn't be okayed. And we should be actively doing things and talking about it, having this conversation and telling people it's not okay. Like, and going back to the simple speak your truth, and saying when it's not okay, when it really just isn't okay. How is it okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mandy?
And the best way to do it is for all men who's listening here is don't brush off our complaints, our voices. Just listen to them. Come on. And I always hate that whenever we talk about rape or sexual assault, the only validation that these guys give out, or girls sometimes, is not all men, but like,
God, yeah.
Come on. A lot of the girls have always felt victimized by people like you. And that's because of the systematic patriarchy. So please just listen to us instead of brushing us off as being annoying social justice warriors.
Yeah. Karisa, anything to add?
I've definitely been in heated conversations with my girlfriends in regards to these types of cases when the blame and the shame is put on the woman.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to fundamentally what Jenn has been saying, instilling these values into both girls and boys and everything in between. Just be, a kind human.
Yeah. I guess that goes back to like trying to support each other as well, not just like with our children, but, within our own communities. But speaking of like communities extending into businesses as well, what do you think we should do that we can encourage more, like in terms of support?
I am pleased that as a generation, we are evolving what norms are in terms of male-female dynamics, etc. And things that were okay only maybe 10 years ago are no longer seen as okay or cool. Mm. And I think continuing to reinforce that in the workplace, outside, is those daily step by step that we have to make.
Yeah. What about you, Jenn?
I would really like to see policy changes in governments all around the world. I think when Kamala Harris, taking a moment for that, I felt like that was a huge step. I know we don't live in the States, but, for me, it was a huge step forward politically. And I think even during the pandemic, you can see that a lot of female-led countries actually suffered less deaths. They were more decisive. They locked down sooner, which kind of helped them take control of the situation sooner. Ultimately, corporations can do what they can. The private sector can do what they can. But if we want to see more instrumental change at a deeper level across the board globally, we need more policy changes. Yeah. We need governments to actually reflect the people they're governing, and we need their policies to be keeping up with the times of what the new generation would like to see more of. Policies need to be more fair, less gender bias, less race bias, less bias, I think, to the wealthy, and just more equal across the board.
Yeah.
Even policies like, I read in the news yesterday that, was it a Paralympic?
Yeah. The one in the UK, was that the one?
No, in Malaysia, he participated in the my memory's so bad, but he has a disability and he's won, I think, something like 5 gold medals for Malaysia, and he now is living in very poor living circumstance, and the government has actually denied him support, and he's wheelchair bound.
Oh, no.
But just seeing things like that just makes me feel, and I think I would like to see governments who actually have leaders who care. I want, for me anyways, because obviously my opinion, but I want more like Jacindas of the world. Like, I feel like the world deserves it. Like, leaders who care for their people and who want to make a difference and isn't just there to make a quick buck to line their own pockets, or isn't there just for the term. As we saw with Trump, you can make a royal mess from one term and undo the good work that was done in 2 terms by the Obamas. And so, for me, I would like to see more changes, hopefully with the pandemic, post-pandemic. There's more of an awakening in terms of what societies need.
And this might be a controversial thought, but whenever we go to events, there's this female founders forum. I want the female founders to be in the main founders forum, not in the sub-female forum. Like, come on. I need more. I need to see more women taking charge of being the representation for little girls, which Jenn is doing to her daughter, and in corporations, please just give it HR and let them focus on these women or these minorities' stories. If there's anything wrong, please cater to them. Please care to their women employees. I think that's just it. I think everything else was wrapped up by you both.
Care.
Yeah, please care. Yeah.
And if I can just point out in our discussion, right? So obviously today's topic, which Amy very nicely curated for us, is on feminism, right? But look, we're talking about education. We're talking about the disabled. We're talking about the poor. We're talking about the marginalized. We covered race. But this is the heart of a woman. Women are nurturers. And here's the thing. So I hate when someone says, be more like a man to a woman in corporate, right? You're such a girl. Like, no, so what? So this goes back to my self-awareness thing. Like, be as you. If you're emotional, be emotional, but nurture your emotion and your passion and how you're feeling into something else. Do something with what you're feeling. Don't just be angry about it, And then people go, what can I do? I'm XYZ. Well, you can do so many little things in so many little ways that matter so much in your own little communities, right? And I think if ever anything, I think women are innately wired differently from men. And that's great. That's fantastic. We want people to be different. This conversation would be so dull if the 4 of us were the same and did exactly the same things and looked the same way and whatever it is. Like, we want different, So I think, women are different from men. And because we care in a different way. We look at things differently. What we're asking for is more of a representation of that difference in governments and in positions where people are able to make policy changes, whether that's in the private or public sector, and based on meritocracy. That's all I would like to see more of in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. And stop hiring women just because you want your corporation to have
that
more female. Yeah. Exactly. Stop doing that.
Let us qualify just by the quality of our work. And by all means, there will be a ton of women who will be amazing at what they do, agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Now to end, because I think we're almost running out of time. But to end, I think it's going to sound like a completely cliche kind of like question, but I'm probably going to change it afterwards. But anyways, to end, what is female empowerment for you? And what would you have your final say for our readers or our listeners out there?
Personally, female empowerment is the opportunity and the confidence to pursue our truth, despite what externalities might try to shape you as, and living your dream, whatever that may be.
For me, the strongest form of empowerment is to create the future we would like, instead of waiting for someone else to do it for us. And it's just beginning where you are, doing what you can, using what you have, stop wishing for more, just start today. I think the future, especially in the last 2 to 3 years with the rise of social media, as we can see, is more female, more youth-driven than it has ever been. And I think that women, I hope, can find empowerment and believe from within themselves. Stop looking somewhere else. It's in you. And I hope that, whoever's listening in, know that you're enough. Know that you can just put 110% of you, all of you, into whatever it is you're doing, so you can continue to upscale, grow, work on yourself, and be happy.
And finally,
Mandy. To me, female empowerment is not hesitating and getting whatever they want. Get that bag, get that husband, get that girlfriend, get whatever art. You want. Get that art, And taking power over the words bitch, slut. Take power over that, because you know what? If you're a bitch boss, okay, you are a bitch boss. It's fine.
Amen. That's the tea. Now, unfortunately, we've kind of run out of time. I think this is one of the longest podcasts we've ever recorded. But I just want to say thank you so much to Jenn, Karisa, and Mandy for coming on board and taking the time out of your insane schedules for our final episode. And also thank you for opening your hearts to us. It really means a lot. Now, to all of our listeners out there, I hope this episode brings a renewed sense of empowerment. And if you ever need a little bit more, please don't forget to check out Jenn, Karisa, and Mandy's Instagram for your daily dose of positivity. Seeing as this is the end of season 1 of our Zalora Talks podcast, I wanted to take this time to once again thank all of our guests who have been with us throughout this entire journey, but most importantly to you, our listeners, who have made each and every episode a little bit more special with all your likes and comments. We're all living in such confusing times right now, and I feel like the more we're able to connect with each other, be it from a fashion, wellness, or even a lifestyle standpoint, the easier it is for us to pull through together. The more that we talk about all these issues, I think the easier it is for us to come out a lot stronger. Now, in that same spirit, don't forget to keep your eyes peeled for our second season coming soon to a speaker near you. That's right, we have another set of inspiring and fun guests lined up on the horizon. So hit subscribe on our Spotify page and follow Zalora on Instagram to keep up to date on upcoming episodes and exclusive sound bites from our series. Until then, this is Yasmine signing out of Zalora Talks, and chat soon in our second season, same time, same place here at Zalora Talks. Goodbye.